We good on the sound? Good feedback? I'll call the meeting to order. This is the July 22nd, 2014 meeting of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. First item on our agenda is Bills and Communications meeting minutes. We have 4 since our last executive session. July 8, 9, 15, 16, and 20, July 8, 9, 15, and 16 of 2014. Everyone have copies of all the minutes? Okay. Can I have a motion? We can take them individually or together as a group.
I would make a motion that we approve them collectively.
Okay. So why don't we, do I have a second on that? Motion has been made by Commissioner Barrett to treat all the meeting minutes collectively, seconded by Commissioner Jacobson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? So the motion passes unanimously. We'll treat all of the meeting minutes together in one swoop. So can I have a motion with regard to the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve meeting minutes collectively by Commissioner Alessi,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Barrett. Does anyone have any comments, changes? I reviewed them. I didn't see anything that needed to be corrected.
Hold on a second. No, I'm good.
Good? Okay. And then you ready to vote?
Only question I have, there's 250 yards around Rock Road, right? To be removed?
Correct.
Remove 250.
Okay, I'm good.
Good?
Mhm.
All right. So the motion is to adopt and approve the meeting minutes for July 8, 9, 15, and 16, 2014. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The item passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is 15 Pine Tree Court special, next item is new applications to recommend a public hearing, zoning regulation amendments, application of the Fairfield Housing Authority to amend Section 10, 28, and 31 regarding Fairfield Housing Authority Pine Tree Development.
These, Mr. Chairman, these two items are related, and a piece of property that is literally in our backyard as we sit here. The Housing Authority is looking to completely redevelop the Pine Tree housing development and has a proposal to do so. It is an amendment in our regulations, and it is an 8-30G application, but it's made by the Town Housing Authority to accomplish some additional units, increasing the unit count to 50 and completely redeveloping the site. And it is a zoning amendment and a special permit as noted in item B, so it does require a public hearing.
All right. Why don't we, we'll first deal with item A, zoning regulation amendments. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to move to public hearing
Move to public hearing.
by Commissioner Jacobson,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Calabrese. Any discussion on the item? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Move to public hearing unanimously. So the second item is 15 Pine Tree Court, special permit application of the Fairfield Housing Authority pertaining to a 50-unit residential development.
I really don't have anything else,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure, let's deal with that.
Go ahead.
Yep. Okay.
Make a motion to move to public hearing?
Motion's been made by Commissioner Calabrese. Second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Alessi. Any discussion?
Who would be presenting that application to our commission? Would it be
Actually,
Mr. Barnhart?
Brian Leclerc has been engaged by the Housing Authority to make that presentation.
Okay, the housing authority is actually engaged by him?
Yes.
Okay, good,
Yes.
okay, thanks.
Okay. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Item carries unanimously. We are waiting for one commissioner, Kennelly, who we make...
Consider doing the sign compliance if you want. and-
You want to do, we can take it out of order? Sure. Why don't we,
Sure.
is there a motion to take item 4, 837, 923 Post Road out of order?
I make a motion.
Motion by Commissioner Alessi to take item out of order.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Barron's. Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. So next item is for compliance. It's 837, 923 Post Road, application of Post Benson Corporation for a new ground sign in a design commercial district.
Okay, you have the graphics in front of you here. This is the Fairfield Shopping Center at the corner of South Benson and the Post Road. The existing ground sign is shown on the right. Is non-conforming in several ways. It's 92 square feet in size. It does not contain the street numbers as our regulations require. And it's also illuminated via some external ground lights that shine up, which is not permitted. The letter heights of the majority of the tenants, as they exist, fall below our minimum required text height. The new proposed sign will cure all of the existing non-conforming elements with the exception of the tenant letter height issue. The area is proposed to be reduced to 50 square feet. The address has been included at the required minimum letter height. The sign will be internally illuminated with an opaque background, so only the copy will illuminate. So that is permitted. The leading edge of the sign will be in the same location as the existing sign. It's not getting any closer to the street. It's about 20 feet from the edge of the curb, or about 8 feet from the property line, which is a non-conforming location, but it's not becoming any more non-conforming. The tenant letter heights will still be smaller than the required minimum. However, again, the existing sign already is non-compliant in that regard. And our regulations do permit an existing nonconformity to remain if the nature of the nonconformity is being reduced. So in this case, you know, on the whole, we're gaining much closer compliance to our regulation than the existing sign, and the only thing that remains non-compliant about this are some of the individual tenant letter heights. It's 15 feet in height, which is permitted. The existing sign is 11 feet, and they kind of give you a representation of that in the drawing. They're eliminating that box at the bottom where they have some lighting. They've found that it's becoming a kind of a de facto garbage receptacle. But in so doing, it kind of opens it up, so if you look at the drawing, you can see under the sign a little bit more effectively than you can presently. So on the whole, we're curing a number of nonconformities here.
Okay. Yeah, when we make a motion, and then we can subject to
Move to
discussion.
approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Jacobson. Second.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Barron, Commissioner Alessi. Discussion, question for staff? Commissioner Barron?
So-
Commissioner Alessi?
You want to go? So the only thing we're worried about, not conforming now, is the sizing of the...
The minimum letter height, correct.
Minimum letter height. Okay.
So,
Fairfield and the large letters meet it, but the individual tenants do not, but they don't already. So part of the issue here is, you know, in the effort to make the sign more compliant, going from 92 square feet to 50 square feet, it kind of squashes the letter heights a little bit, but they're willing to trade that off. They have some internal pressure amongst the landlord-tenant for IDs on the sign, but they're okay with this even smaller size because it's going to be internally illuminated at night, and they think it looks, you know, it's a better looking sign.
So the idea of just putting Fairfield Shopping Center with no list of stores is really not...
Well, again, that would move it to complete compliance, but it's non-conforming now as it stands.
go ahead, and then I have a question. Go ahead. Commissioner Barron?
You can ask your question.
Well, I was looking at the notes and the detail in the plan. So the old sign, it says tenant letters 5 inches, and then on the left, the new, it says tenant letter 3.5 inches,
Correct.
and medium letter 4 3/4. So it looks like those tenant letters are getting smaller, are they?
That's correct.
They're doing it by size.
Yeah, they are. They are getting smaller, and that's a byproduct of them reducing the size of the sign from 92 square feet down to the 50 that we permit. So it's a trade-off. You know, the alternative is for them to maintain what they have and kind of put a new, kind of reface it in its existing format. But we thought there was an opportunity here to at least gain some measure of compliance, even though, yes, the letter heights are getting somewhat smaller than what they already are. You know, it's our view that some of the other aspects of the compliance kind of outweighs that, but obviously that's really up to you.
Commissioner Barron?
Yeah, I recall this was up many years ago in a similar thing. I can't remember what we did with it, but it was the same thing. It was non-compliant, and the application was making it better. I mean, I'm leaning in favor of this right now because it does address a lot of the issues with the
Right.
current sign. It doesn't address all of them. The remaining one is the small letters, which was tough to read on the current sign, and it's a little tougher on this sign. So that's obviously, that's the only compliance issue, and that's the only issue I see with the sign. But I do think it's a better looking sign visually, and it complies with our regulations, and we like the numbers on that. Although, you know, I don't know when people are looking for these types of stores that are in a strip of stores, if the number matters as much as if they're looking for a particular building. But certainly, it's within our regs that they have to have it. I just, you know, that is, that people can find where they're looking for.
A lot of the advertisements for the individual businesses will use the main number,
Okay.
which just gives you the conflict.
GPS.
Yeah, particularly with the prevalence of GPS, you plug in if you know the number. I know I look, you know, if I'm going someplace I've never been before, I'm more reliant on a street number than anything else, but that's just
Yeah.
me.
I guess the issue I don't think anybody's going to stop in there, like drive by, because they see this sign. It's just a question of being able to find what you're looking for, so.
I agree, and
Start-
I think that's probably the case as it presently stands as well.
Yep.
Commissioner Francis?
Do our regulations require the words Fairfield Shopping Center?
No, we can't dictate what a sign says, but when we adopted a minimum letter height, the intent really was to accomplish just that, for them to emphasize the address in the center rather than individual tenants, and that was the intent on having a minimum, so it kind of, you have to choose what your message would be.
I wonder if they put 837, 923 Post Road and left out Fairfield Shopping Center, if you couldn't get the store names to be legible.
Well, I mean, you could, but I think, you know, what we're trying to encourage is to reduce the number of tenants you identify. They're keeping it, you know, the same, but I don't know that we necessarily want to do that. I mean, first of all, you really can't dictate what, we set the parameters, they choose what the message is.
Anyone else?
I mean, our options here are to approve this sign or deny it because it doesn't comply.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Our options are approve it or leave what they have there. That's our option.
Well, they're either going to leave it alone or reface it in some way. They want to revamp it, freshen it up. They could reface the existing sign and leave it essentially as is with, you know, with newer plaques. That, you know, that wouldn't be a substantive change to the sign. It would require your approval.
I think it's definitely an improvement, but the store names are really small.
It's going to set a precedent later on with other shopping centers.
Well, no, if they didn't have the existing sign that they have there, we wouldn't be having this discussion. They would be limited to 50 square feet and the minimum letter height. But, you know, they're trying to achieve a greater sense of compliance. They wouldn't be, we wouldn't, well, if they didn't have what they have now, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Okay.
I mean, I'm inclined to, approve it. It is an improvement. The old sign is pretty ugly. It's pretty dated.
I agree, I'm gonna vote to approve this too. It is an improvement. That gets rid of that big concrete garbage bill.
I'm honestly not that worried about the height of the lettering, because I think once you have the street numbers there, if people don't know where they're going, the street numbers will clue them in. If they do know what they're going, they're never reading the sign. And, I don't glance at those signs as I drive by strip malls where I don't know the contents. You back in the car in front of you, even if they're decent size lettering, it's just, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think that having the numbers there is a big advantage.
Well, we're constantly complaining about signs being too big, and now it's coming in with a small one. So, I think on balance, it's achieves an improvement. Anyone else? Are we ready to vote? Okay. So the motion is to approve the new sign plan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The item carries unanimously. Next item on our agenda is 92-140 Bronson Road, zoning compliance and coastal site plan application of Garden Homes Management pertaining to a 95-unit residential development pursuant to Section 830G of Connecticut General Statutes. Public hearings were held on July 8, 9, 15, and 16, 2014. Expiration date is 7/24. Present at the hearings are Wagner, Alessi, Barretts, Calabrese, Jacobson, and Kennelly, and Coleman and Francis. Should we take a poll quickly of just everyone to make sure we've been or read the tapes, right?
I was able to watch their TV, and I also have the supporting materials, so I'll be able to get up to date.
Okay,
Those
so...
are both the presentations by the public.
Right, okay, so Commissioner Kennelly has
Joe Griggs' presentation.
listened or watched the videos and otherwise come up to speed on the record. Commissioner Barretts,
I was at all 4 meetings.
as was I.
I was at all meetings.
I was at all the meetings.
I was there at all of them.
Okay, and
I missed June 10th and I watched the tape, so
All right.
I'm current.
that was Commissioner Coleman, who is sitting in for Commissioner Nyland. All right,
Right, Mr. Chairman, what we'll do, staff will give a brief overview of what's being proposed, and also ultimately outline the findings that the commission needs to consider for this particular application. As you know, Garden Home Management is proposing to construct Southport Apartments, which is a 95-unit multifamily rental building on a 2.9-acre parcel located at 92 and 140 Bronson Road. The building will consist exclusively of small units, 37 studios and 58 one-bedroom. The project's being submitted under the Connecticut Affordable Housing Land Use Appeals Act, Section 8-30G of the state statutes. In this particular application, there is no proposal for a zone amendment to the regulations or a zone change for the property. The statute does permit an application for site plan only when it does meet the criteria for 830G. The project consists of an elevated building with 3 residential floors over parking. At grade, the site is bounded on the north by I-95, to the east by Mill River, to the south by Metro North Railroad, New Haven line, and to the west by a private resident. The typical studios that I've mentioned in one-bedrooms will be 520 square feet and 670 square feet. The plan also provides for 113 parking spaces, which is a ratio of 1.2 spaces per unit. As I mentioned before, the project proposes to meet the 830G standards by setting aside 30% of the units as affordable for a period of 40 years. The details of the set-aside are enumerated in an affordability plan that we received as part of our packet of information. That was discussed at the hearing. Now again, the application is subject to the 830G statute, reviewed by the commission, is ultimately driven the issues that can the housing project be built without creating a threat to public interest for health and safety. This includes criteria that we will now outline for you in the findings report that we have. Mr. Wentworth.
Okay, as Joe just mentioned, and we've heard this several times at the hearing, 8-30G kind of flips the burden of proof to this commission that if the application is in fact denied, the commission has the burden to demonstrate that based on the evidence in the record, that decision was necessary to protect a substantial public interest in health and safety, that public interest clearly outweighs the need for affordable housing, and that the public interest cannot be protected by the imposition of reasonable conditions of approval. So you have a vast record before you, and we have outlined some things that we think are relevant for your consideration here. The existing right-of-way servicing this proposal and the improvements thereon currently provide access to 3 lots that contain a total of 4 dwelling units. The applicant's proposal is to utilize that same access to serve 97 dwelling units, which is the existing 2-family on the Kovacs property and their proposed 95 units. The applicant proposes to improve the access to a paved width of 20 feet. Evidence in the record indicates that the 20-foot paved width is insufficient for the number of dwelling units proposed and for the length of the singular access point to this proposed development. The first 130 feet of the proposed 300-foot access drive is within a town right-of-way, as was discussed. Our own regulations provide the optimal standard for improvements within a public right-of-way pursuant to section 3.2.3 of the subdivision regulations. That standard is 30 feet. The minimum standard pursuant to that same section is 24 feet. Similarly, our subdivision regulations provide that all private streets that serve more than 6 dwelling units also have a paved width of 24 feet. The town engineer has recommended a minimum paved width of 24 feet for two-way traffic. We heard a lot about NFPA 1. The minimum fire department access road standards pursuant to NFPA 1 is 20 feet. However, the NFPA code also does not preclude the authority having jurisdiction from imposing a stricter standard than the minimum that's contained in the code. Also, the NFPA code provides that more than one access road should be provided when it's determined that access by a single road could be impaired by vehicle congestion, conditions of terrain, climate conditions, or other factors that could limit that access. You heard from the town's fire chief testify that public safety concerns arise from this proposed plan. Due to the proposed intense use of the property for 95 dwelling units, its distance from Bronson Road, and its narrow access with a near 90-degree turn, the chief expressed the following concerns. Access swing for a ladder truck, in his words, were nearly impossible. Access to the side or rear of the building is inadequate. The width of the driveway is not sufficient to safely deploy emergency apparatus or to allow other vehicles to get by the apparatus. An ambulance, for example, would not be able to get by a fire truck. This condition could be made worse if there were heavy snow conditions. A fire truck cannot turn around on the site and would therefore have to back some 300 feet or more out to Bronson Road. Access to the site and its ability to, inability to respond to an emergency in a timely fashion would be compromised. And all of that adds up to his opinion that the site constraints warrant a second means of access for this development. The applicant's own fire expert, during cross-examination, agreed that the proposed access exceeds the length at which a turnaround must be provided. Other conditions that might reasonably indicate that that single 20-foot access road could become congested include the traffic flow through the site depends on vehicles being able to travel under the elevated building. There is no provision for turnaround for any vehicle that exceeds a height of 10 feet. Average daily traffic volume on the access road is estimated by the applicant's traffic engineer at over 640 vehicles per day. Pedestrian traffic will further impair the access road due to the lack of sidewalks on the site. There was some discussion about a standard of 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit being a credible standard offered by the opponent's traffic engineer. Failure to provide sufficient parking pursuant to that standard could reasonably be a source of additional congestion. The proposed parking aisle width of 22 feet instead of the required 24 feet would create the need for additional maneuvering. The coastal area management application portion of this application includes the Connecticut DEEP requirement to consider public access to the waterfront. The applicant has offered to provide a public access amenity and parking to satisfy that standard. The provision of such public amenity and its required parking could further exacerbate congestion. And the bottom line here is the provision of a second means of vehicular access is simply not possible on this site. The applicant offered some conditions of approval, but they do not satisfy all of the safety concerns that were raised in this record. The record does not contain any evidence to support any other reasonable conditions of approval that could be made to remedy those issues. The applicant, in their rebuttal memo of July 14th, on page 11 of that document, offered that if the town wants additional widening beyond what the fire prevention code would require, it's free to do so at its own expense. However, in that same document, beginning on page 19, the applicant's engineer provided a series of drawings, and he also provided testimony to you to explain why the roadway cannot be widened beyond the proposed 20 feet. This leaves this commission in really an untenable position. The record evidence indicates there's a need for a paved roadway greater than 20 feet in width in order to protect substantial public health and safety interests, while at the same time, the applicant has demonstrated that the required roadway widening cannot be achieved. So we believe that that adds up, based on those issues in the entirety of this record, we believe that that supports the findings that the statute requires, is that there is sufficient evidence in the record to support a finding that the proposed development would pose substantial risk to public interest in health and safety, that those public interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing, and there is no reasonable conditions of approval that can be made to protect those public interests. That is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. White. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Commissioner Alessi.
Make a motion to adopt the draft findings and conclusions presented in the staff report. As a commission statement with one addition, the applicant has not demonstrated they have a sewage capacity and would also need sewer approval in any event. I studied the record and the issues and believe the findings and conclusions to be appropriate and accurate and to deny this application.
I believe the motion is to adopt the staff, the comments into the record. I would make that motion also, since they were received after the close of the public hearing, that we can get the information from town employees and staff, and I just second the motion to include this in the public record as you moved.
Right. So, just to be clear, you made a motion to adopt the findings, the staff report findings and conclusions as a commission statement,
That is true.
with one addition relating to the
The
sewage capacity?
we still don't even have a sewage approval yet at this time either.
Right.
I understand.
Okay, you understand the motion?
I understand better. Yeah, I would second the motion to adopt it as a commission statement. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Okay, so the motion's been made by Commissioner Alessi and seconded by Commissioner Barretts. Okay. Commissioner Jacobson.
I support the adoption of the report as well.
As do I.
I do as well.
Commissioner Barretts?
I support it, yes.
All right. Well, this has been a very difficult application, certainly. Yeah, I also do support the staff recommendations. You know, there were many issues raised in the 16 hours of public hearings that we held on this with many witnesses. You know, I was quite troubled by certain of the data points that were raised by the applicant's traffic engineer. And we questioned those a bit. Some of the references that he had cited for certain propositions didn't appear to us to be consistent with the citations that he had provided to us, and traffic engineer, for example, for the Lower Bronson Road Neighborhood Association, clarified some of those data points and presented some additional citations. And in fact, the applicant's traffic engineer conceded that there were certain data points and representations that he made that needed to be corrected. One primary example is the number of anticipated vehicle trips per day on the site. Initially, he was suggesting to us, he was more than suggesting, he was advocating that there would be no more than about 400, when at the end of the day, he acknowledged that that number was more properly around 640 vehicle trips per day. I then am also faced with wondering, what else might have been not exactly correct. None of the opinions or data that was presented by the opposition traffic engineer was challenged in any way. I find that the Lower Bronson Road Neighborhood Association traffic engineer to be more credible. And so, consistent with that, I think that the staff recommendation is accurate, and I support it. The applicant's attorney urged us, directed us to develop conditions of approval here in light of what was a tacit admission that the proposal, did pose a public safety risk. Didn't expressly acknowledge that, but by submitting the conditions of approval to which the applicant, in his words, would agree to, for example, creating a turnaround and including additional handicap parking spaces that would be required under the ADA. There was an attempt to ameliorate the public health and safety concerns, but it didn't go far enough. There are these issues which simply cannot be addressed. That the site, the constraints of the site just can't accommodate. And so, I do agree that there are no reasonable conditions of approval that we can impose for this application. And so, confronted with that, I also agree that the risk to the public health, safety, and welfare outweighs the need for affordable housing at this site. I mean, the safety concerns that were raised were with respect to the residents that would be proposed to be housed on this site, and so I just don't see how that can be re-engineered. It would be one thing for us to say, well, the road should be widened, and there's ability to do that. Okay. You need a second access point, and if there's an ability to provide that, then that would be sufficient. But here it goes beyond that, and there is not evidence in the record which would provide me with the basis upon which to impose any reasonable conditions for approval. Even the suggested conditions of approval by the applicant were not capable of being reviewed by, the engineers and the like, and that was acknowledged by the applicant in their rebuttal when they presented that. And so, for these and many other reasons, I think that the record is really clear, and I would urge that we adopt the staff report, according to the motion. Commissioner Barretts?
Yeah, I thank the staff for preparing that commission statement. Just reviewing the record and sitting through 4 nights, I won't belabor the point. They've said it a lot better than I, but there were a number of issues. It's not just the public safety issues that I found with the application. It was the lack of a 24-foot driveway, the fire department access, Mr. Fellner's comments, needing more than one access, not having to back out more than 150 feet. I think their driveway is substantially longer than that. That was acknowledged. 22-foot parking aisles, the complete lack of sidewalks, which is a legitimate public interest. I don't know, the expectation was that people would live there and the only way they could come or go was in an automobile. Yet not all of them would own automobiles. It's dangerous, and it's a legitimate public interest. It's not just a nice to have. We've adopted that as something we want to do both in the state and our town, is promoting pedestrian safety and access. So I didn't regard that as just a nice to have point. Any development such as this, really should have sidewalks of this size, certainly. The vehicle clearance appeared to be insufficient. They ignored the comments of the town engineer. I wasn't sure that they weren't modifying a town road. There were a number of things. So when asked to make the assessment, again, the staff has really put it, and the parking I found was insufficient too. And it wasn't just the pure numbers here. What was unique about the site is that whether it's 1.2 or 1.5, the problem is here is if you can't park in the lot, there's no safe alternative. It's not like a thing, if they can't find a spot in the lot, they'll park in the road. There's no other place to park there, which is unsafe. And the fire department, noted that as well too. So for all those reasons, I would support denial of this application. I think there is sufficient evidence. As I said, I just kind of went through a bullet point of facts. We could go into the detail. There was evidence on the record for all of this, like Mr. Wagner. I found the question of who's right is the traffic expert we heard from the Lower Brownson Road neighbor was more credible. His rationale was more credible. Anybody can take certain data and match. That's what they do. Again, we had to. I found the use of the land use type that was used. I even questioned the data in the original traffic report whether they used the right land use type for trip generation. So for all those reasons, again, and then do these interests clearly outweigh the need for public housing? Well, we do have a need for public housing, but there are so many issues here on this particular application that could not be addressed through conditions of approval. I think we have no choice but to deny this application.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, I would just also like to make it clear that my comments were also in addition to what staff presented, and I didn't feel the need to repeat all of those issues again.
Just a reminder, Mr. Chairman, my motion is to deny the application.
I believe your motion is to adopt the staff report as a commission statement.
Correct.
With an addition that the applicant has also not demonstrated adequate sewage capacity, which they would need an approval from WPCA in any event.
Correct.
And that motion has been seconded by Commissioner Barretts. Correct? All right, so
To be clear, an adoption of the staff report is essentially de facto denial.
microphone.
Use your mic.
So,
Adoption of the staff report's conclusions is therefore essentially de facto denial? Is
well,
that
the motion is
Or to just simply add it to the record?
the motion is to adopt the staff report findings and conclusions as a commission statement with an addition regarding the sewage, and on that basis, deny the application.
Are we voting to adopt and then voting to deny?
No.
Okay, right. That's all. Thank you.
A vote in the alternative, a vote in the affirmative is to adopt the staff report recommendation, findings and conclusions as a commission statement with an addition regarding the sewage, and on that basis and those conclusions, to deny the application. Everybody clear on that? Okay. Are we ready to vote? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. I believe that's it on the agenda. I'll close the hearing.